All right, I'm gonna have a nice little conversation evening for me. You'll probably see it during the weekend when it's daylight, but nice evening conversation before I go back out, maybe and have some fun. But we're gonna talk about the anti-slut defense, okay, as it's been called now, and we're gonna whatever. But I'll explain what that is. What we're really talking about is how female desire works contextually, okay? And this will be a good video for both men and women, actually, because women, let's face it, they don't know, y'all don't know what triggers your desire. You don't understand how it works half the time, all right? You think you do, you don't. And so this will be good for you to help figure yourself out. And guys are often very confused at the very odd behavior that women will sometimes display when it comes to their nature, their desire. And so this will help with that. But before we get into it, take your finger, slide it over, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can get notified of other videos. At the end, I'll have an email address. Get on it, get on my list. Okay, I got some free content that'll be coming out to you. YouTube censors won't allow me to talk about everything I like to talk about and provide as much value to you. So you get on that list, and there's things in development, and you'll start getting no ads, no spam, just content that is I can't share with you here, okay, because of the censors. Things that'll really help your game and up your game, but we have to have adult conversations, and sometimes the censors don't like those kinds of conversations. But all right, let's get into it. Anti-slut defense. Where did that come from? ASD, okay, is what it's been called. That was a long time, probably, 20 years ago now? That's a pickup artist term, all right? And what it basically described was, it was the defenses that women would, or barriers to sex that women would put up. All right. So in a nutshell, a woman does not want to be perceived as a slut because then she knows that her worth, her value, and her worth as a woman is predicated on, how selective she is sexually. Okay. And so if she is somebody who is perceived as a slut and who will have sex with whoever, and has high notch count and does all that stuff, I don't care what society wants to say about slut shaming and all this crap. It doesn't matter. What men know, and high value men know, that makes you less worth a crap, if you are basically not very sexually selective, right? So that means that you're not worth as much to most men. And so women don't want to be seen as that. And they don't want to be seen by their peers as a slut, right? They don't want to be seen like that. So they have these defenses or barriers, you know what I mean, to proceeding with sex. And so anti-slut defense was ASD was a way of describing those barriers. So if she was like really prudish and won't have sex till after 5 dates, she had really high anti-slut defense, And so then they would work through ways of getting through the anti-slut defense to get them to sleep with them sooner. And then came the term last minute resistance, you know what I mean? So that was LMR, we got all these, it's like playing Dungeons and Dragons with this PUA guys sometimes, right? You got all these like little niche terms and stuff. So LMR, last minute resistance, that was a way to get a girl to remove that last minute barrier to sex and have sex with you. All right. So that's the whole breakdown of what that is from the PUA community. That's not really as important though. All that stuff. That's not it. To understand it, I use the term in the video just so you get an understanding of the basis of it. The pickup artist had a basic rudimentary understanding of how female desire worked and the duplicity of it and some of the conflicts that happen with women and between what we would call their anti-slut defense and their desire, okay? And I'm not going to call it the anti-slut defense for this video really because it's not really a good term in my opinion for describing what this is. What it really is their sexual action point, okay? That means that they have a point where they would do sexual action, where they will allow sexual action to happen, all right? So that an action point where they will open their legs and have sex, okay? And feel okay to do that. And so a lot of the PUA stuff gets a little bit, in my opinion, can get a little bit of sexually assaulty. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that they were trying to sexually assault people, but trying to get a girl to sleep with you that is putting up a lot of barriers to sleeping with you, it can get a bit rapey, right? Like, we don't want to do that. That's not good. And I think men ultimately want genuine desire from a woman. That's what they're after. That's why you guys are trying to be alpha. That's why you guys are you're trying a lot of things. And I've covered it in other videos. So, you want that genuine desire. You don't want to have to, you don't want to have to use tricks and manipulations and alcohol and drugs and weird, to try to get a girl to sleep with you. All right, we don't want that. That gets, again, we're now crossing into the area, a gray area of is she actually consensual or not, and we don't want to even be in that gray area. We want her to be a hell yes woman, let's bang, I'm so excited to be with you woman, not a, I don't know, okay? But a lot of weird stuff happens, and it'll happen in the relationship. It'll happen outside when you're dating, and so it's important to kind of understand this stuff, all right? Hot day. A lot of things going on. I might drink water during the video. You're just going to have to deal with it. All right? So let's talk about it. So here's what we have. Let's look at, this is going to up your game. Like, this is going to up your game tremendously. If you can get past the production value and the fact that I don't have a lot of dancing clowns in the background or Taylor Swift music or whatever, you know what I mean? If you can get past all that stuff, just get the content, it's going to up your game tremendously for you to understand this. For you to get this, this is going to help you a lot, all right? So kudos to you, you actually watch my stuff, because you're gonna be a cut above most people. But let's look at this in terms of scales, okay? So we have a desire scale here, okay? So you see that? That's the desire scale. 0 meaning like zero desire, 10 meaning they're orgasming, okay? Like that's that's where their desires. 10, they're in the middle of sex and definitely orgasming. That's a 10, okay? So 10 is the highest desire you can go, and 0 is zero desire, neutral. I mean, we could say there's negative desire too, right? Like they're repulsed by you. Maybe that's a -4 or something, okay? But we won't deal with that. We'll deal with 0 to 10. All right, so let's say a woman is, let's use this scenario. I'm just going to kind of go through it. Like, let's say a woman is on, her first date, you know what I mean? And so she's got a set of principles. Now, women, their anti-slut defense isn't just social, okay? It's them trying to protect. Women are designed to try to protect their womb and try to save themselves for their best sexual options. All right? They cannot have babies with everyone. So think about how the primitive mind is. So they're designed to rule out sexual possibilities and select the best one within a given period of time. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of what they're trying to do. And so but they don't really know how to do, there's no one giving them a class on how to do it, right? A young girl. And they have a lot of contrary information. Society right now is telling them that if they're not getting dick regularly, that they're not worth a shit. That's what society tells women nowadays. And then they rack their notch count up, and then they can't pair bond. So it's cool. Society's really helping women ruin their capabilities of being happy in a relationship ever. But that being said, this means that people don't know what's going on. They're not telling, young girls aren't getting good info. Women aren't getting good info. They don't really know. They don't have a set of principles to go on. And you have to understand this too. Women don't run on principles anyways. They may have them, but that's not where they operate. Okay, women are not principled. They're emotional. You have to remember that. This is why they can often hold multiple ideas that conflict with each other in their heads at the same time, and it's like perfectly fine. And if you're a dude, with a logical reasoning brain, you look at them like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And it can be very frustrating to deal with sometimes if you're expecting a different result from women. But if you understand women, not so frustrating. Like, you understand that because they're emotional beings, that they will break principles all the time. They generally don't have them, okay? They might have them, but it's only like to a point. It's always like circumstantial. Like, I would never do this. Well, unless A, B, and C is there, and then I guess I did that this one time, And so think about their sexual behavior. That's how they all are. I'll never sleep with a man on the first date. Have you ever slept with a man on the first date? Well, yeah, I did that one time because blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't have sex with them. Well, really? You didn't have sex with them? Okay, I gave them a blowjob. Yeah, it's like, okay, like they can hold they can hold conflicting thoughts because it's based on emotions and it's based on how people perceive them. They're more concerned about how they're perceived in their social environment, how they're perceived by people in their circle, than they are standing by certain principles. When it comes to sexual decisions, I'm not talking about, accounting or engineering or political things, sometimes political things though, but women can be principled things, other things in their lives, but when it comes to sexual decisions, the chimpanzee, the primitive brain, the primitive chimpanzee that is running the show, okay? It's a primitive mind that runs the show. All right? So the chimp is in the driver's seat and they're off the tracks now, all right? So you got to understand that. They don't know what the hell they're doing. All right? Women, they don't know what they're doing. All right? And the ones that say they do, they don't. But they got this desire. Okay? They got a desire for a person, like a 0 to 10 scale. But then they have this other scale too that's working. Okay? And we can call this the sexual action scale or point. Okay? So that's this other scale, all right, that's working that, a lot of times we don't think about this other scale, or we don't think about it, we don't deal with it. But the sexual action scale, they're both running at the same time. They do influence each other, but they're not the same, okay? So the best way to describe these two scales, because there's her genuine desire and where her desire lies, but then there's like that point where she says to herself, I'm not going to have sex unless this happens, right? And so it's like, and depending on the circumstance and her set of morals and beliefs and social acceptance and how she thinks people will perceive her and just the overall, like, a lot of factors in the mating decision, she'll set that scale or that bar high or low. So let me give you an example. Let's say we're talking about a woman with average principles, and she doesn't want to sleep around, and she's pretty adamant she's not going to have sex on the first date. You know what I mean? And so she's just not going to do it. That's like, that's her thing. She's not, hey, I'm not doing it. So she's very serious about it. Even if she's very aroused by the guy, she doesn't want to do that. She maybe has religious beliefs to go along with it. She'll wait a number of dates, but she's not going to do it on the first date. Not when she just meets a guy. That's her principles. That's her identity. That's her anti-slut defense, as they would say in the PUA world. So what that means is that her sexual action point is a number 8, okay? So if 7.5 is highly aroused and they're actually making out and doing stuff, and a 10 is like I'm orgasming, she would have to be past an 8 for her to agree and say my desire is enough. I'm going to have sex with this person. So she could go on this date, and she's, let's say, excited about the date. She met the guy, he seems really interesting. She's off of work. Maybe she's at a 1 right now. Okay, beginning of the date, she's a little unsure, a little anxious. So she's at like a 1. Okay, and so as the date progresses, the guy is doing everything right. So he gets her to a 3, a 4. You know what I mean? She's climbing up the scale in arousal based on his actions, how he's treating her, what he's doing, his game, okay, so to speak. This is where game comes in, all right? So he's got good game. So meaning when I say game, I mean he knows how to get what he wants with women because his communication skills and he's communicating with her on an emotional level and on a primitive level, okay? And he's making her feel aroused throughout the date, and they're escalating a little bit, they're flirting, there's some touching going on, through dinner and some of the stuff, whatever's happening on this date. Let's say it's a dinner date, whatever, which I don't recommend first dates to be that, but let's pretend. Okay, let's say they are going with my recommendation. It's just drinks after on a Thursday, but then drinks turn into dinner, like things keep escalating, okay? So that's really what I would recommend. And let's say that that's happening and things are going really well. And then, he's kind of you know, they're making out a bunch. They go for a walk in a park, or they do, you know, they're whatever, and they're going at it, like they start really making out and stuff. And so her desire gets to be like a 7, which is really high. So they're now tongues down the throat, 7. Okay, is she gonna see? And she is excited about this guy. This is the dude, man. Like, this guy is holy crap, and he's good looking. He checks all the blocks for her. Okay. But, so she's aroused. She wants to bang this guy, okay? But is she going to bang him if her sexual action point is an 8 and she is at a 7? And she won't, you know, they're on a park bench or something, so maybe they're not me, I'll bang a girl right on the park bench. It doesn't bother me at all, but maybe they're just not progressing it that way. And so, and she's putting barriers up and stuff, and it just doesn't get aroused past the 7. You know, so even though she really likes the guy, things went really well and all this stuff, is she going to sleep with him? Well, no, she's not. You see, her sexual action threshold was an 8. Her sexual action point was an 8. Okay, so in her mind, like, she doesn't know this consciously. This is just, she doesn't have sex on the first dates. So that's a big anti-slut defense for her. So that action threshold is really high. A dude has to really break through that stuff. Now, let's say he says and does, maybe it's hormonally the right time of the month for her. She's around ovulation. He's an alpha dude. And, you know, he takes her past that 7. Gets her climbing to an 8, 8.5. She's banging him, okay? So even though she set the scale high and she said to everyone, I never have sex on the first date. That's the principle. She's not driven by principles. She's driven by emotions, and she's driven by her primitive brain, okay? Now, her primitive brain runs on desire, and it also runs on there's a protective nature. That's why hypergamy is. Hypergamy is actually protective in a sense. Like, your sexual selection. She is being selective. So she's, you know, her primitive brain is selecting a mate or according to whatever she perceives as the best genetic option. And she has principles and ideas behind that. And so her sexual action point was high. It was an 8. But if he gets her to an 8 and they're making out on the bench and whatever, she's going to sleep with him. She'll have sex with him right there on that bench. Ask me how I know. So, even though she said in the beginning, well, I'm not going to, she might have said earlier, I'm not going to have sex with you. Okay, so she said that. She meant it when she said it, okay, because that's the principles that she had in her head. But women do not run on principles, right? They run on emotions and their hindbrain first. And so once the desire grows past her sexual action point, okay, then, you know, she's deciding, she's sleeping with him. And that's the essence of it. So you have to understand that there are 2 scales happening here. And they're due to her primitive drive. They're both being driven by protecting the womb, that part of the protective nature of her primitive brain, and also which is trying to vet out the highest value man, and then sexual desire, meaning I want to bang, okay? So those 2 things are driven by the chimp. All right, I call it the chimpanzee because it's just your primitive brain. It's not at a higher order than a chimpanzee at that point, making those decisions. All right, and then her emotions and how she feels about it kind of gets pushed by that primitive brain, and then she makes a mating decision. Now let's use a different scenario. We'll keep going with this. I'll keep going with examples so you can see how this is important. All right. So let's say he gets her to a 7. Even a 7.5, they cool off, never gets to an 8, doesn't have sex on the first date, okay? Cool, all right, so that's how it ends, but she is into this dude, like but then he's kind of a dick to her, you know, well, he not yet, but he jumps on a red pill for him. I'm a red pill. I support a lot of red pill guys, and you know, I consider myself that. But let's be real, some of the forums out there and some of you dudes who listen to me who are these red pill guys are so negative, and you'll freaking, you'll bullshit yourself, okay? Using red pill ideology, which is true ideology, you'll bullshit yourself and screw yourself up when you see women. So let's say he did that, and he's in it, well, it's just your turn, and she does not, you're not alpha enough, and all this crap, because he doesn't understand this scale, he doesn't know how it works, she doesn't know that she has a strong aversion to sleeping she's very against sleeping with someone on a first date, and that put her at an 8. And it's not had nothing to do, like, it's not that he's not the best date she's had in a very long time. It's all this, so he just gets the internal self-talk about, well, she had genuine desire. Well, remember at the Cannon phone party, the Rollo Tomasi example, she slept with a guy in 5 minutes, you're just not that guy. Okay, so they listen to all that stuff. So he shows up on date number 2, he's got a crappy attitude. All right, so he's got a crappy attitude. He's not even sure he wants to be on this date now. He doesn't think he's the alpha guy. He doesn't think he's worth a crap. You know what I'm saying? So he gets her to maybe like a 5. You know what I mean? Or he gets her maybe, actually he really screws up a lot. Negs her a bunch. Let's say he screws it up a bunch. So he only gets her to like a 4 on the desire scale. Okay. We can just do that, I guess. So he only gets her at 4 on a desire scale. You know what I'm saying? So screws up a bunch in the date, misinterprets and takes all this, the stuff he's reading and listening to. And I'm not, remember, she should probably bang that guy 5 minutes knowing him like 5 years ago. And now you're the beta provider, like all this stuff. Twisting things that even I would say to not fit the right circumstance and not look at it the right way. So he doesn't show up outcome independent. He doesn't show up alpha. He shows up kind of like a little bitch, and he plays too many games. He negs her a bunch. He treats her like crap, and in a way that's unattractive. I mean, there's ways to treat women like crap sometimes that actually brings the attractiveness up, believe it or not, but that's not what happens in this case. So she just doesn't get their desire. She's like at a 4. But all week though, she had been thinking about him. She had been wanting to to see him more. She wasn't really, she was thinking, man, I really like this dude. I wanted to sleep with him so bad. I just didn't want to be seen as a slut. So I didn't sleep with him on that first date. And so she may have brought down her action threshold to like a 5. Okay, so her sexual action threshold was like a 5. She was wanting to sleep with this dude. All he had to do was get her aroused second time around, just like before, and she was banging. She was ready to do that. She was loosened up those defenses, okay? But this guy showed up with a bad attitude. He didn't do the right stuff. He didn't game her correctly. When I say game, I don't mean manipulation and bad things. I mean just the communication, right? He did not show up outcome independent and communicate in a way with her that was effective to her hindbrain. So he didn't sleep with her. Second date, once again, doesn't sleep with her on a second date, all right? So now he's really annoyed or whatever. And, she walks away kind of like with a bad taste in her mouth now. It's incongruent, okay? She really wanted to sleep with this guy. She brought that threshold all the way down to a 5. And now he didn't get her aroused past a 4. There wasn't as much going on. There was a kiss at the end, but she didn't get her. She was kind of aroused, but she's aroused because he was such a dick. But you know what I mean, which is arousing because then she wanted to qualify to him, but it wasn't arousing enough to push her over. He didn't balance. He didn't seduce her, the right way. And so that lack of seduction, didn't happen. Okay, so then let's say she goes on a date with another dude, because we know that if she's dating other men. Like, you're not the only one, right? You know that. If you don't know that, guess what? You need to realize that she's not in a commitment with you. She's got other dudes on the table, probably, most likely. You gotta figure that that's the case. So let's say she goes out with this dude, okay, but that dude is like a real loser, and so she's back up, her threshold's back up to an 8. It's a first date with this guy. And she's not so sure about it, but she really liked that guy that she went out with before, but he gave her confusing mixed signals, so she wasn't sure what to do. So she goes out with like total douchebag guy that she's been avoiding from her, DMs. You know what I mean? Because she's not sure, and and now she's kind of disappointed. And so when women are disappointed, they throw other guys in the mix. True. And so she decides, I'm going to go out with this dude. Now her thing is still at an 8. Now it's first date again with a new guy. So first date with a new guy, she's at an 8. Her action threshold, okay, and her action point is set at an 8. And so her desire, though, this guy doesn't get her past, like, this guy is like a negative, like, 1, okay? The guy is such a jackhole. She's like -1. She went from 0 to negative desire. Like, he was not, he pissed her off during the date. He wasn't, but not in a good way. And he was a loser, right? And he was unattractive to her. And she was like, why am I on this date? She couldn't wait to get away from this guy. Okay. She cut it short, had the friend call, oh, I got an emergency, and did that thing and left. Okay. So now she has a bad taste in her mouth. She hasn't had dick in a while. And so she hasn't had dick in a while. Maybe now her cycle, okay, she's starting to ovulate, and the most alpha guy she knows is the guy that she went out with 2 times and hadn't slept with yet. That guy had been maybe trying to date other people. It's not that cool. So he decides to go out with her on a 3rd date, but he's in a better mood this time. Okay, he got his shit together. Let's say he coached me. He had a coaching session with me, and I got rid of his negative, took all the truths that are in Red Pill, but, we talked about it and went through things so that he could get rid of the negative self-talk and bullshit that he tells himself, and he became outcome independent like a real alpha man should be. And so he's like, take it or leave it. I'm here to have a good time. If she's stupid, I'm going to have other women. That's his mindset, but he's there to have a good time, and he shows up, best version of himself, more like he was on that first date, okay? Well, now, so her action threshold, where do you think that might be? She just had a terrible date. She'd been hemming and hawing and thinking about this guy that she really liked on that first date. He sent confusing messages on the 2nd date. They hadn't slept together, but she's been thinking about this guy. And then when she went out with that loser, she's really thinking about him a lot more now. You know what I'm saying? So, like, and then they'll tend to remember, people in general will tend to remember, unless it's a seriously traumatic event that happens, they'll remember the good more than the bad. It's just what we do as a defense mechanism as human beings. So she's remembering the cool stuff from the first date. She's remembering the few things from the 2nd date that she liked or whatever. And she kind of is glazing over the fact that he was kind of an a-hole on that 2nd date. Not in an attractive way, though, but in a not a good way. And so she starts to see him like, and you know what? She's horny. She had sex in a while, and she, because women can't go like a month without it. She's like, needs the dick to survive. And it's like, it's that time her hormones are the highest during ovulation. So boom, her action threshold, okay, is now a 3. So 3rd date, her action threshold is now a 3. And it's average to sleep with someone on a 3rd date. That's like good. So she doesn't have anti-slut defense over that. She's like cool with that, right? So she's not going to be seen as a slut for having waited 3 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks and on a 3rd date. You know what I'm saying? And so maybe she skipped a week and didn't see him because, for whatever reason, because he left a bad taste. But now, so she's at a 3. Her action threshold's at a 3. This guy does all the right stuff. He gets her arousal to way past a 3, and boom, it's check please, and they're making out in the car. They're driving to one of their places, and they're banging. Like, they don't even get to any other BS in the rest of the night. You know what I'm saying? Like, she throws it. She's like ready for it now. Okay. And so, and boom, and she even gets to a 10. She gets to a 10. She has some O's that night, perfect night for her. So there's a little vignette to describe, okay, the whole thing, what's happening with this anti-slut defense, what this is. It's this primitive part of their brain, okay, that's setting up these rules for them. They're setting up a threshold, and it's circumstantial. On the first date, she was at an 8 because I don't have sex with people on the first date. I'm not a slut. You see what I'm saying? Now, if he had blasted her through and past an 8 in desire, if he was alpha enough, attractive enough, and had enough game, understand, he could have been the most attractive guy in the world to her, and she may have still said no, okay? But if he had the right game, though, she would have gotten past an 8. You get what I'm saying? And so you have to see how it's circumstantial. Just because a girl doesn't sleep with you on the first date, but she slept with a guy on spring break on the first fucking 15 minutes, that doesn't mean that you're not alpha enough and that guy, that loser F-boy that she slept with was more alpha than you. It's not, that is not, see, you guys are too binary. Some of you that read the material I tell you to read, ones you pay attention, tell you to read Rational Male because it's a good book. You know, and I tell you to follow guys like Rich Cooper, like Rollo Tomasi. I'll even throw the whole Redman group in this video. You know, John MLD is hilarious and has great content. Ryan Stone has great content. These guys are good, okay? But you got to understand though, okay? When you look at a million people, we can predict behavior. You know what I'm saying? I can predict if she didn't make this guy wait for sex and made this guy wait for sex. If we're looking at a statistical millions of people, 100,000 people, whatever, we can start predicting, well, this guy's more alpha than that guy, okay? But when we start looking at individual behavior, individuals are much more unpredictable unless you have more of the history and the backstory, okay? And so you have to understand that this action threshold or action point that they walk in with, that they're set at, when they are in a certain scenario is gonna greatly determine whether or not she sleeps with somebody or not. It's not just desire. It's also this anti-slut defense thing that the PUAs figured out. They didn't have it as scientifically woke as I do in this video. I mean, what I'm giving you is years of research and development and experimentation and case studies. I'm just kidding. It's not any of that shit. I just kind of observed it, okay? And I'm giving you this model, all right? And yes, it's mine, but it describes what we're talking about, which is that this threshold is contextual. And so maybe the guy at the, maybe the guy at the Canon foam party in Rollo Tomasi's example, okay, maybe she sleeps with them after 15 minutes of knowing him. Well, was it because he was the most alpha guy she's ever been with? Well, let's say that she's really intoxicated, okay, and she's on spring break, and she's out with all of her hoes, and she's in her early 20s. So what does that mean? Where's her sexual action threshold? She may be walked into that. She's a walking slut, right? Like, she doesn't care. And she's on spring break, so there's no anti-slut defense. No one's going to know. So her action threshold's like a 3. You know what I'm saying? She's there to get banged. She showed up to the party to get drunk, do some drugs, hang out with her girlfriends, and find a dude to bang. That's what she showed up for. She showed up to get banged. When she's showing up to get banged, where do you think her action threshold is? She could only be at about a 3. The guy could have been an average F-boy, okay? That's just at the party. He's the available penis. And maybe he really only gets her at about a 4.5 on the desire scale, okay? But that's all it takes for her to go bang him out or, in the parking lot, is because she showed up wanting sex that day when she was 20 years old or whatever on that, and drunk and high and on spring break and all her friends are getting dick, right? So she showed up to get dick. She was waiting for that opportunity. And then she's danced with the guy when she's half intoxicated and he starts rubbing her in her fucking vagina. And then, next thing you know, she's aroused, but how aroused can she be? She's pretty intoxicated. That intoxication brings her action threshold way down, okay? And so then now she finds she's at a 3 and she's, just doing this guy in the dance floor, or whatever. She's, she's got her hands down his pants. Does that make him the most alpha guy? The most attractive guy she's ever been with? Because, just your turn and she made you wait. You're not the alpha guy. What's wrong with you? I hope you like my water breaks. Adds for intensity of the video there a little bit. Oh no, of course not, right? Of course not. It's BS, man. It's BS. Her action threshold would just lower that day, okay? You could be the most alpha guy that she's ever been with in her life, okay? That she's ever been out with, she's ever been in contact with. Doesn't matter, right? She could be the best thing that's ever happened to her on that date. And she could have had a death in the family, things going on at work, whatever. First date, anti-slut built up because she's now in her late 20s and she knows better, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And so she has her anti-slut defense set really high. She found Jesus when she was 28. You know what I mean? So she was hoeing around when she was 21, found Jesus when she was 28, conveniently, to get married and have babies. Epiphany. Oh, my past sins and behaviors are so bad. And so, of course, has nothing to do with her sexual market value going down every year, but that's fine. She's, okay, cool. Like, I found Jesus. I'm not going to have sex on first dates anymore. That's the old me. Okay, so, but then whatever it is, that puts her sexual action point at a higher point, right? And that's why she didn't make the decision to be with one person in one context. But in another context, when the guy was like not as good, the guy was a 5 or 4 for her in the as far as the desire and arousal scale, but her threshold was so low at that moment. Maybe it was after a bad breakup and she was emotionally vulnerable, pissed off, and horny, and she wanted to revenge cuck, because that's usually what that is all about, by the way. She wanted to revenge cuck the old guy, okay? And so she's going home with a real sloppy, gross dude, you know what I mean? At the end of the night on a Tuesday, her action threshold was a 3 or a 2, and she doesn't even orgasm with that guy. That's how bad the sex is, but she does it anyway. Is it because that guy's alpha? You see what I'm saying, guys? It's not black and white. It's not binary. You guys got to get, just because someone says some true stuff about alpha beta dynamics, that doesn't mean you go, oh, yep, and just regurgitate somebody else's words and another content creator's words and not understand how women work. All right, this is not, you have to go on dates, hang out with women, enjoy yourself, and begin to understand understand how they are, and you'll understand how these things are, and you won't see, all you guys are still so concerned, even though you say you're not. It's all BS. You're still so worried about what some dumb chick thinks about you, and I'm gonna tell you, they're all stupid. All right, every single one of them. I don't care if she's a rocket scientist with 3 PhDs. She's a dummy. All right. Oh, I'm a misogynist, sexist. No, I don't mean that she's a low IQ person. She may be very intelligent. She may be more intelligent than me, have done better in school than I ever have. She might even make more money than I do. She might have all this stuff going on because she's so smart. But the problem is, when it comes to making sexual decisions, that's not what's in charge, boys. It's not the brain that's in charge. It's the chimp that I keep talking about. The chimpanzee is in charge. The emotional chimpanzee is in the driver's seat making all the decisions when it comes to sexual decisions. So the most woke, smart, cool chick on earth is still a dummy when it comes to this stuff. Some of them can get better at understanding it and try to make better decisions. They can make better decisions for themselves, don't get me wrong. And there's a scale on this, but you're not dealing with a smart person. You're dealing with a chimpanzee, a chimp brain, okay? A primitive emotional brain. And so this is why they're all over the place with these things. And this is, and where they decide to set this threshold is completely like arbitrary and subjective to the circumstance most of the time. There's a primitive reason for it, but it's not accurate. Their hypergamous decisions are not usually accurate, okay? They're very subjective, all right? So don't think because some girl rejects you or doesn't like you or whatever, you may have been able to do better stuff. So I'm not saying don't take inventory on that and better yourself. But the chances are, though, it's just her being a dumb girl, man. And you guys put your self-esteem and your sense of yourself as a man into an opinions of a dumb girl who doesn't make good relationship decisions, which is most of them. You see what I'm saying? Why do you do that? Okay? And so then you look at things like, well, she rejected me, but this other person, she didn't, Again, there's this threshold that we're talking about that plays a role in these decisions. So let's look at, well, what if I'm just like, what if he's just alpha, right? So that's actually the answer, right? The answer is to be alpha guy with good game, with a lot of things going for you, okay? So then let's say, it doesn't matter. Let's say she is Team Slut America and her threshold's always at a 3, okay? Or let's say that she's really smitten by you and she's not a slut. She doesn't sleep with everybody, but man, she is just taken by you because you're so damn alpha and good looking and you got money and all this stuff and you're just an amazing guy. But she drops it down just meeting you. She's about a 5, you know, her action threshold's like a 5, you know, let's say. You're a celebrity, maybe, you know, she'll sleep with you just because you're a celebrity. So her action threshold's a 1, all right? Or maybe, you know, she's just big on that first date thing and she's like the other girl and she's not, even though you're the best dude she's ever been on a date with in terms of sexual market value, she's still going to place you at an 8 because she has that anti-slut defense built up so hard for that first date. She's been burned before. And it doesn't matter that she did it before. Okay, it's the scenario she's in now has caused her to have these aversions. But if you show up and you're an alpha dude, you're sure of yourself, you know, you got masculine energy, you're outcome independent, meaning that you go for what you want, but you don't care what other people or the outside things are doing. You know it's going to work out regardless. You don't care about her opinions of you. Okay, you don't weigh your self-worth on some opinions of her or any other woman. All right, and you show up that way and you're fun, cool, no drama, and, you know, you escalate with her sexually and you get her too because you're that alpha dude, right? You're alpha screws, alpha Fs, alpha seed, whatever. You get her to an 8.5, okay? Because you're so darn alpha. She's going to sleep with you and she's going to be happy with it. All right? She's going to be happy there. You see, and that's how that works. This video is getting long. I have so many other examples to give you how it works, like how transactional sex works. For example, she puts her threshold only down, let's say for a transactional sex, meaning she's having sex with a guy because he's a good match for a beta provider. You know what I'm saying? So the guy's a good match for, you know, providing for children and all that BS, right? Like he's got a good job and he checks all the blocks as the nice guy, but he's not that attractive. So she drops her sexual threshold down to a 3, like once a month. So her action threshold, she's only going to desire this guy on a scale of desire. On the best day she ever has, she'll only desire him as a 4, okay? So this is her desire, you know, so she's only desiring him. She's just not attracted to him, all right? He's funny and he takes care of the kids, all the beta reasons she's with this dude. So scale of attractiveness, she puts him at a 4, okay? But like once a month, she'll drop down, once or twice a month, she'll drop down her threshold to a 3 so that she could get aroused enough to have sex with him, all right? And she may, whether she orgasms or not, it's incidental. You know, she's thinking of somebody else or whatever, or clearing her mind or closing her eyes, all right? And so she just drips that little bit of unenthusiastic sex throughout the entire relationship so she can meet her other you know, mating goals, which is having the 2 kids and the big house and all that stuff. So that would be an example of a transactional relationship. All right. 3 X's ago, she was a 10 for that guy all the time, right? She was an 8 for that guy all the time in desire. All right. And so even when he was an asshole and she didn't want to sleep with him because she knew it would be bad for him, she couldn't help herself. She slept with him anyway because her desire was so high. It didn't matter where she was on that threshold scale. And so now 3 X's later, bad relationships later, she settles with a guy. It's a transactional beta relationship. And so where's she at? She has to artificially bring it down to a 3 to preserve, you know, to slow drip sex on him, you know, once or twice a month, just to preserve that relationship so she can meet her other goals. And so that'd be an example of a transactional scenario, you know. And so it's not all, you know, validational sex or transactional sex. You know, there's something called what I call experiential too. So let's say it's experiential sex. Okay. So experiential sex means like she's in it for the experience. So that's the girl who goes on spring break. She's showing up to get banged because that's what all girls do on spring break. You know, they go on vacation, they party, they drink, they do drugs, and they get banged. You know what I mean? That's what her friends are doing. That's what she's going to do. Or that woman who Eat, Pray, Love tour decides to go to Greece and she bangs the busboy, you know? So that's the experience. So she's not like, it's not like that guy that she picks is the validational alpha. It's just that guy provides the experience for her. So the guy that she meets and has that little story about this guy that she met in Greece and bangs him, you know, is he really the best sex? Is he the alpha dude or whatever? No, but it's all part of that package for her. Because women like this whole fairy tale story that they build in their heads. And so they'll do these things on vacation or this thing that everything's like remember the old Red Shoe Diaries and Showtime when I was younger, because you couldn't just get porn on the internet when I was younger. You'd watch something like Red Shoe Diaries to get turned on. Anyway, so everything to them is a Red Shoe Diary story. You know what I mean? Like, it's just fantasy story. And that's why they like things like romance novels and, 50 Shades and stuff like that, because they want the experience. And so when a woman is going after that experience, kind of any guy will do. So right place or right time will be it. And so guys will think their game is really good on vacation or something when they're banging some divorced slut who just wants the experience. Your game's not that good. It's just that her threshold is down. She brought her threshold down to like a 2 or a 3. You know what I mean? So her action threshold was a 2 or a 3. You didn't need to get her that aroused. You didn't need to game her that much to get her, to sleep with you, right? That's experiential sex. And we can even talk about, last thing we'll talk about is something to be aware of is in the relationship. So generally speaking, in the relationship, in a healthy relationship, you guys are banging all the time. If you're not, then you need to call me for coaching. I'm serious about that. Okay, because that is the sex is what holds a relationship together. Okay, if it wasn't for sex, then you would be roommates and you'd be buddies. You know what I'm saying? So any healthy relationship, there's a lot of sex involved. Okay, and I'm just going to leave that open to you, what you think that means. But it's more than a couple times a month at least, right? And so you're having regular awesome sex with somebody. Well, what happens is, because she's in a relationship with you, she's relatively happy. You're doing most of the right things. She puts her threshold down like most of the time. Her action threshold is like a 3, okay, or even a 2. All right, so she's DTF anytime for you at a 2. Unless she's sick or not feeling well or uncomfortable or stressed out, or you know what I mean, or feeling like she weighs 1,000 pounds because she's on her period's just about to start. Some of these things that women go through. She's having sex with you. She's having sex with you every day. She's having sex with you anytime she wants. She's giving you regular oral sex. You're giving her regular sex. I mean, you guys are just going at it, right? So her threshold's now down for a 2 for you. And men, if you're not experiencing that, if you're doing LTRs with people and you're not having sex as often as you would like and she wants more, then you need to get on my email list, okay? Because we're going to talk about stuff like that. And if you have a serious problem, you need to send me an email or send me a message through Messenger, and we need to do some coaching, a few sessions to hopefully get your game on track with your LTR, because you should be having sex all the time, okay? And she should be wanting more, all right? That's how it should go. If it's not, you're doing it wrong. And I don't care if you're married. I don't care if you live together. Don't let anybody tell you, okay, well, it goes down, whatever. It does go down because now you're doing the right things, okay? So if you run shit the way I run it, it's different. You run shit the way I'll teach you, you'll have a different result, okay? But now back to it though. Here's the danger though. If she is at a 2 threshold all the time, well, what tends to happen is guys and girls will get lazy. So they just kind of roll over and bang each other, right? And so you're so used to only having to get her to like a 4, maybe get her to a 4 or a 5 on the desire threshold to initiate sex. There's no buildup. And so it becomes redundant. Okay? And what you lose is something called variety. And once you start losing variety, then sex starts getting boring for her. And she starts, even if she likes it, even if she orgasms, even if like her regular sex toy, she starts, it's just not the, you know what I mean? Sex isn't the same as it was in the beginning. And that starts happening. Then that hypergamous brain starts working on overdrive, and she starts wondering and questioning the relationship. And that's not what you want, right? And you want enthusiastic, good experiences. Some of you guys are so damn lazy. I can't understand how you live your lives like that, And so you have to up your game. Just because she's offering it to you readily all the time, she's doing that somewhat out of duty because she's in a relationship with you, and somewhat out of desire. If she's always getting something out of it, usually orgasms, always has a good time, well then it's just conditioning now at this point. But that doesn't mean that you might roll over, you might just have just regular whatever sex, but at least a few times a week, you're doing something a little bit different. You're giving a little variety. You're holding back a little bit, or you're seducing a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? You're creating that seduction process for her. And I don't care if you've been married for 20 years or married for 1 year or not married or whatever. You always have to seduce your woman, all right? And you always have to create that. If you stop doing that, if you get lazy like that, she's going to start to question the relationship, and she's going to, that sex will start going down too. You don't want that. And so you got to get used to, don't get too complacent, I guess is the point. So that's the danger. It's just because she brings that threshold down, that doesn't mean that you're building up the most amount of desire for her. So keep that in mind. Just because a girl sleeps with you, that doesn't mean she has the most desire for you. She'll sleep with you because she brought that threshold down. How many women will bring their threshold down to a 3 when, they're not ovulating a couple times a month to offer transactional sex to their guys that they're living with or their husbands, and then their threshold, goes back down. Maybe their threshold is more at a 7 when they go out for girls' night, but they're really craving that alpha, and that alpha comes into her life and she cheats on her husband. That alpha brings her past a 7. She's been craving, she's just not aroused by her beta husband, and she's been craving something. And even though her sense of commitment maybe had her put her threshold at a 6 or 7, even though she wants it real bad from a different guy, that different guy shows up, does all the right things, says all the right things, even though her values put her at, again, let's say a 6 for her action threshold. This dude pushes her into a 7. They're getting a hotel room, they're banging. She's cheating on her husband. You see how that works? So we're about an hour into the video, or close to it. It's a long video. Those of you who made it to the end, good job. Because that means you're going to get all this information, and you're going to know what the hell's going on with women. You're going to understand their desire. Isn't that worth 50 minutes worth of discussion? Chilled out discussion where I draw markers on a piece of paper. I'm a little bit sweating right now because I got to get my air conditioning is being worked on in my lake house here. But whatever, man. We're just chilling. We're chilling. Having a little evening discussion, me and you, and talking about women, talking about desire. And if you're a woman, I'm so glad you listened to this, because you need to hear it too. You need to understand what's going on with you. You know what I mean? Because you don't always know. Because you'll end up, women will leave a scenario, go, why did I sleep with that guy? What did I do? They don't get it. And so you have to understand that, again, to sum it up, you have these 2 drives at work. One is the desire, okay? And the other one is this sexual decision point threshold or scale, okay? So they have a decision point where they're set at that point of the desire marker, that's where they're going to end up sleeping with somebody. You know what I mean? And it's contextual and depends on the guy. It depends on the situation. All right? And you have to look at each of those situations are a little bit different, Just because their threshold's low, that doesn't mean that the guy's the super alpha or the best guy. A lot of times it's just the circumstance she's in. Maybe she's during her slut phase of her life where she sleeps with a different guy every month. And so, so she's only at about a 2 or 3. It doesn't require much. Just a few drinks at a party and, the right guy at the right moment, she'll sleep with the guy, right? Maybe that's where she's at 20 years old, 21. But then when she turns 30 and her sexual market value goes down a little and she realizes all the bad decisions she made and she realizes she doesn't have much time left, she starts vetting more. Now those days are over with. And so that threshold is going to be a little bit higher maybe for her. You see what I'm saying? And so that makes a difference. But back to slut defense, though, if you're wanting to get all these tips and tricks to make a girl sleep with you, I'm sorry, this is not the right video for that, number 1. Number 2, the answer is game. The answer is game and showing up and being her best sexual option. So you be her alpha and you have good game. If you want specifics of that, ask me in the comments. If no one asks me shit and no one watches my shit, then I'm just going to talk about whatever I want and feel like it. But if you want shit, you want me to cover shit that I know very well, I'd be happy to cover it, all right? If you want the tips and tricks, I'll let you know. But here's the thing about those tips and tricks. Generally speaking, I don't want a girl that I have to blast through last-minute resistance with, all right? I don't want to be in a situation where she's like, no, stop. and then I'm having to do a trick to get her to sleep with me. I would rather go for a different girl. So you need to be at an abundance in your life where you have so many women that when you're dating, the ones that are not, their threshold's a little bit too high, maybe their desire is just a little bit too low for you, whatever that reason is, you can easily let those girls go or put them in timeout and work on other things. And then maybe her action threshold will lower a little bit because she's thought about it and, really wants to maybe do something else. I've had women who I've been on dates with who made out some stuff and she kind of did the last minute resistance, right? And I was like, cool, whatever. Was outcome fine, that's fine by me. I'm not going to try to push you into something that, it wasn't me being dutiful, it's just I only take genuine desire as a thing. And there's things that I do, there's a little push-pull and stuff, but I'm not pushing hard on some girl. If she doesn't want to sleep with me, cool, because I got a whole bunch that do. So it was just kind of like, well, thanks for coming out. And end of the evening, no animosity, wasn't upset about it. But guess what? I wasn't calling her again. I had other women, and I wasn't that excited about her. And so that last minute resistance just sealed the deal for me to not call her again and not worry about it. And this happened to me a couple times, and it's one I'm thinking of. It was like 2 or 3 months later. She's like, I really thought about hey, what are you up to? I'm like, nothing much, what's up? She's like, what do you need? She's like, I really thought about the last time we were together, and I don't like the way that it ended. I wish I've been thinking about doing more with you, so let's try again. So I've had that call months later. What happened there? Well, for whatever reason that they know and I don't know, that sexual action threshold was much higher set for me that day. And I just, didn't care to push it past that or to try to make it that happen more for them. You know what I mean? Like they were at a point, basically, they would have had to be in the act of sex in order to accept sex, which is a little bit dangerous, right? I would have had to force myself, which I'll never do to a chick, right? And so sex didn't happen and it haunted them, it bothered them. And I wasn't bothered by it because I have a lot of options. So for them, they were bothered by it, it really, and it was to the point where months later, after me not calling them, no contact, they probably went out, probably in that scenario that I mentioned before, went out on some other dates, blew it with some other dudes, or they were probably with somebody to begin with. That usually happens. Just broke up with someone, but they're not really broken up. And so I'm just the guy that they get their mind off that guy for the evening, but they're really not ready to move on yet. And so whatever, right? So, but I kick them to the curb, I just kick them to the curb. And so what ends up happening is they regret that decision. They find out that I was that alpha option for them that they missed, and so they're crawling back and they're blowing me up and they're wanting to hang out. And sometimes I do, sometimes I let them and sometimes I wouldn't, depending. But that's the point though. Okay, it's not all, alpha and beta and desire and genuine desire is really important, and you really need to understand that stuff. None of that stuff is untrue, okay, that you read in the sources that I've given you in some of these other videos. But this is another piece, though, you have to understand. This sexual action threshold is very subjective, circumstantial, and you need to understand that this is also part of the picture. When you understand both of these things, then you can begin to understand more why women do some of the things they do and why they make some of the sexual decisions they make. And that is really going to help you whether you're long-term relationship, just dating, whatever you're doing, that's really going to help you understand women. And women, again, those of you who listened, you're really going to have a better understanding of yourselves, okay? And the things that I do say are science-based, but I just happen to have put it into my own model here for you to understand. So, thanks for the support. Long video. I hope you made it through it. Wait till the end and get that email address, get on my list. And thank you. I am late. I gotta go out and do things. I got people waiting on me, and I'm doing this for you guys. Take care.